So I'm Allison Lewinson. I'm a Senior Customer Success Manager with Salesforce, and I also have here Emily Kranz with Listening Book and Sarah Williamson with Avaya, and we'll walk through our lessons learned and implementation best practices. So I'm sure you guys have seen plenty of these for the last couple of days. Obviously, it's required, and it's on our website since we're a publicly traded company. So I'll be walking you guys through our the overall takeaways for this session, and that will include our resources that are available and our implementation plan best practices. And everything that I'm going to be referring to, I'll be handing it off to Emily and Sarah, who will be walking through a great use case from Listening Book from a small implementation point of view, and then Avaya with Sarah with a large implementation point of view, and see how they've actually incorporated all of our resources, our best practices, and their lessons learned. So hopefully you guys can take that away and use that. And then we'll do the drawing at the end, and then go into Q&A just in case we run a little bit long. So as far as our takeaways, before you guys leave this session, you'll definitely know all the resources and tools available for you and the building blocks to begin a successful implementation. And even if you've already started your implementation, it will also be the building blocks to ensure that you've covered all the main key areas and make sure you hit on all those important key building blocks to have that successful implementation or optimization. And then, of course, definitely the use cases and lessons learned from our great examples here today. So we have lots of resources available to you guys, all at your fingertips, and it's all available on our website. We have our whole community website that we have our implementation best practices posted there, our user groups that you can sign up in your area, in your local city, discussion forums, our idea exchange. As you guys know, we have about 3 releases per year, and most of those releases are made up, the majority of our ideas that you guys post, hearing your use cases and voting those up to the top, and hearing from all of our customers. Our app exchange and success tours, and of course our Dreamforce session. This is such a great opportunity. Thank you guys all for coming this week, and I hope that you guys have had a chance to really take advantage. And anything that you can't remember or can't recall or weren't able to attend to, all of the materials will end up being posted right away. They've already started posting the materials, and we'll definitely be doing follow-up on handouts. So you guys have all the materials and key takeaways, as well as all these sessions are being recorded. So we have lots of our partners and our Salesforce.com labs have put out applications on our app exchange, over 900 applications that you guys can take advantage of. And Emily and Sarah will be definitely talking about the ones that they've leveraged. In all of the implementations that I've been a part of, I've really leveraged and used what's out there on App Exchange. We have all the ones that you see Force.com labs are all free and supported by Salesforce.com. So this way you have a template and something to start with. I've always taken advantage of that, and Sarah and Emily will talk to that as well, of really taking advantage of what's out there. Everything from downloading dashboard templates, so at least you have a starting point, and also Google Maps and other applications to start from across all different industries, financial, retail, etc., high tech, and taking advantage out there. So everything with this Force.com labs logo, you know, is supported by Salesforce, and it's actually included with your subscription already. So now that you're familiar with all the tools and resources out there, I'd like to go through the different building blocks to really get you guys off on the right start or make sure that you hit all the right key areas. So building your team, so depending on whether you have a small implementation, a small set of resources, or a really large, complex implementation, you might have folks having different hats and playing different roles within your project team, but making sure you at least define all these different resources. So you might have a project manager that's also your senior business analyst doing the configuration, or an administrator, but making sure that you have all these roles defined. What's really important is having an executive sponsorship. No matter how small or large you guys are, having that executive sponsorship and making sure that you have that top-down approach. I've always seen in the most successful implementations, it's really having that top-down approach and having that executive sponsorship, really encouraging and really showing, paving the way to make sure that you guys have the resources and the budget necessary to make a successful implementation. So again, defining your project manager, your administrator, and your power users. Those are the folks who are, your end users are going to be the ones actually using it, who you want to adopt and make sure that they understand the value. So you really want to make sure you're incorporating into what their requirements, what their needs are, so they know right away what the value is that they're going to be taking out of it. So defining your goals, always making sure that you know what's the end goals, or what's the vision with Salesforce when you're implementing it, and making sure you define those goals out, so that way you know what metrics that you're defining and why you're gathering the requirements, so that way you don't put too many fields on a page, and you're really making sure that you capture the right information that's going to, again, it all ties into adoption and what you're really getting out of Salesforce. So gathering those requirements from your power users and making sure that they're all in alignment. Defining your approach. So again, understanding with your resources and your time frame of really trying to get something out as quick as possible, so that way people can see the value right away. Internally at Salesforce, so the different approaches, waterfall is that traditional waterfall method that most of you guys are already probably pretty aware of with other applications that you've deployed, of that waterfall methodology of going through the different phases, gathering all the requirements, and then deploying at the very end. Or a more agile, more Scrum methodology where it's very iterative, where you're gathering some small set of requirements, pushing it out, and keep on building and making it more robust. That's actually what we do within Salesforce.com. We follow a very agile Scrum methodology. So, for example, with our Winter 10 release, we pushed out quotes, and it's not as robust as it will end up being. In our next release, we'll add on more functionality, make it more robust, and in our summer, and so on and so forth. So we really want to get the value out there, start making sure that in our next iterative approach, we're going in the right direction and not assuming how the end users are going to see the value right away. So this way you can really model and make it more flexible and make sure that you really get that high adoption and people see the value. Defining your processes, it's on the business process side, but then on your project side, what's your release management process? What are your business processes? So making sure that from a project standpoint that you're defining how are we going to be rolling out these releases, how are we going to be gathering the information and deploying and making sure that we're capturing enhancements and issues and bugs and releasing that out through our sandbox, then to production. And then on the business side, making sure that you have clearly defined business processes. What's your sales process? What's your service process? And making sure that that's clearly defined and laid out. So when you're training to that, everyone's consistent. And so it's all leading back up through your business metrics and your vision to make sure everyone's doing it consistently. You're gathering the right data all in a consistent manner. And that obviously, as far as data goes, making sure that you have that credible data, because if it doesn't matter how amazing the technology is and how amazing you did with the implementation, if the data is not credible, then people aren't going to trust the system. So making sure you have consistent business processes and tying that all in. Again, defining your metrics with those goals. So you have your goal, what's your vision, what are you looking for as far as your overall roadmap, and what are those metrics that are leading to that vision? So that way you can make sure that you're building your reports and dashboards off of your requirements based on those metrics and leading into that overall vision. Admin training, I'm sure you guys are all aware that there's a lot of resources out there. We have the free online training, and it's important that your administrators also, we have our administrative workshops, that they get the right training necessary so that they feel comfortable with not only how to configure Salesforce and how to develop Salesforce, but what's possible. And that's also great, not just from your administrator standpoint, but also from that management level or even your power users, just understanding as part of your project team what's possible, so when you're building out your roadmap, they are aware of all the different areas, because you're not going to implement everything all at once. Maybe down the road you'll implement content, then ideas, then service and support. And so knowing what's available and what's possible, and that's what you get from the administration trainings and workshops as well. Communication. I'm sure with all of your implementations, this is key, and this is always something that's not always planned out and really seen as the forefront, and it's important, that whole change management piece of making sure that at the end of the day, it's about adoption and value, and really seeing with the success of Salesforce, it's important for your end users to know what's in it for them at every level. A lot of times it's very clear what's in it for the management team or the executive team, and that's why it's important to communicate what's in it for the end users. And so communicating out that this is coming, when's it going to be rolled out, when it's rolled out, when are you going to be adding new features, how are you going to be taking our feedback and incorporating it in. And so communicating what's the rollout plan and how we're going to make sure that they're always being aware of. And then once you've rolled it out, making sure that there's training and webinars and support groups and super users to really help support them so they don't feel lost. And I know if you're rolling out sales, from a sales perspective, they always need constant reminders and support, and having those power users and management support to back that up. So that's really important. So now I'll go ahead and take all the resources and implementation blocks that I've went through, but really see what the use cases and how Emily Kranz from Listing Book went through it, and from that smaller implementation point of view. And actually, Emily Kranz, congratulations, she just won our MVP Appy Award and got certified this week. So I'll hand it over to Emily.
Thanks, guys. It has been a great Dreamforce for me and for Listing Book, and my voice is showing that a little bit, so apologies if I'm a little scratchy or voice is breaking. So like Allison said, I work for Listing Book. We are an online real estate website servicing realtors and their home buyers and sellers. We are a small implementation. We have about 66 full licensed seats and about 25 Force.com seats. Personally, I'm very excited about the 100 free Force.com seats we got here this week. One of the best piece of advice that I got when I was originally investigating CRM solutions, you guys will see I was tasked to implement a CRM solution, and what we ended up doing is bring in Salesforce in and really driving almost all of our business processes and all of our systems through via Salesforce. So, but when I was originally looking and evaluating various options, someone said, Salesforce.com will give you a 1-month free trial. Use that 1-month free trial. And I thought that was really great advice. We used our 1-month free trial to do things like validate our object model and make sure that the questions we had about technology could all be resolved. We also developed a small but very useful marketing approval process that was a great thing to release. We actually went live with that the day that our contract started. So the first day that we had our seats in place, I had users logging into Salesforce, trained them on this approval process, and got them started right away. It was a really effective way to kind of roll out with a big bang. This is a solution that solved an immediate problem that we had. Didn't leverage a huge amount of Salesforce, but it was relevant to so many people in our company. It really helped our adoption. So coming back to the implementation, what getting ready to begin, before you even start that implementation, Sarah walked through a lot of the good key drivers that you need to be thinking about. And I hope you all noticed she barely mentioned the technology. Almost everything she's talking about is process and having the right people in place and having the right plans in place. So the things that I would recommend is that you really think about what your goals are at the beginning of your implementation. If you're in the middle of your implementation and haven't done it yet, now's the time. Sit down and think about those goals. I literally documented out 6 major goals that we wanted to accomplish with Salesforce, and I opened that document on time to time and look back and track our progress on each of those goals. So set out those goals. Like I said, the first thing that we implemented was not one of those 6 major goals, but it was a minor goal and a big win for us right away. When you organize your team, I absolutely agree that executive level support is a must-have for your implementation. I also really think that your end user support is really important. Treat the people who are going to be using the system like your customers. Talk to them, understand what their needs are, understand what their pain points are, and you'll make sure that you're delivering a really relevant product that they're going to use and is going to help them in their day-to-day business, which of course is going to make everything more successful. In addition to understanding the processes, it's so important to understand your data. The more time that you spend mapping out what your data object model is, what your data systems of records are, make sure you know, I have another system that we're going to integrate with Salesforce, and that system has XYZ data. That system owns which of that data will be replicated into Salesforce. A good friend at Salesforce recommended I do a data system of record diagram, and it ended up turning into a data system of record and transactions and process diagram. This was very, very beneficial. Beyond my fantastic Visio skills, what it did is it made us think very critically about which systems own what data is changeable where, and how is that data going to flow back and forth between systems. Excuse me. So you'll see here, this again was at the very beginning of when we implemented. It's completely out of date at this point. But we thought very long and hard about what data does Listing Book, my legacy system, own, which of that data are we going to put up to Salesforce, and then once we have that data in Salesforce, what are the processes that we want to put in place using that data. So along the bottom row, I've got every department in my company and just kind of what they're going to be doing with Salesforce.com. So taking some time to document that out and write it down somewhere was very, very useful for us and helped us think through a lot of the things. In documenting out each department, we went to the leadership of those departments. We went to every level within the organization. I sat down with customer support reps and just watched what they did on a day-to-day basis to understand what they were doing now and help get their ideas on how we could improve it. Okay, this is our implementation timeline of about the first 6 months. And what you will, a couple of things that I'll recommend. Again, meeting with executive sponsorship, you'll see there's 2 red triangle sets. Those are a couple of milestones I wanted to point out. The one on the top row is actually our contract sign date when we went live. So as you can see, we were using that free trial to get some of our data in, to do some of our configuration, to get that marketing approval process in place. And the day we went live, again, small company, we gathered everybody in one room and put it up on a screen and showed them what it was, and they started using it right away. Now, like I said, that was a small approval process around a custom object. It wasn't really leveraging a lot of the Salesforce standard functionality. The second set of milestones is a meeting that we had with my CEO and the rest of the C-level leadership in my company. We sat down with them to talk about security. And literally, we brought them an Excel spreadsheet that was a prettied up spreadsheet that had all of the roles and all of the objects and check marks for who had access to what. Now, we had already thought this through, and we already knew what we thought security should be. But sitting down with the leadership and letting them, A, see what we had done, and B, give us some feedback and make a few tweaks here and there was really, really beneficial. So it helped it helped really build their confidence that we were thinking about security, that we were worried about these kinds of issues, that we weren't going to go live with a system that was going to cause any issues. And like I said, they were able to give us some feedback and make some improvements to what we had already done. So you can see here along the top, I've got kind of what departments we released to. And again, we went with our marketing approval process first. Then about a month after our contract went live, we released to the sales field. We brought everybody in for a national sales meeting and had, it's never enough training, so not enough training. And then they went live about that time. You'll see as far as our data, we started by doing the whole Excel to Salesforce data uploader. We got to know the data uploader really well. Very, very quickly, we realized that the data drives the system, right? So we had thought a lot about what should the data model be, what objects, what fields should we have, and then we really quickly realized the more data you can automate into your system, the more stuff that is inside Salesforce when people start using it, the better off everybody is. If you're starting with a blank system and expecting your people to build all of that data and to enter all of the good, relevant data that you're going to need, that's a big hill to climb. So if you're using Excel spreadsheets, if you're using Postgres databases, if you're using SAP, figure out how to pull the relevant data into Salesforce. Like I said, we started out with a data loader. I pulled one of our web developer guys who wrote a PHP integration script. Now, in the last 18 months, that script has gone from like a quick and dirty, get the data in there, to a very robust, complex integration. But the fact that we had data in the system from day one, especially for our salespeople, that they already had accounts, they already had contacts, they already knew, you know, had reports that could guide them in the right direction was really, really beneficial. You can see along the bottom we have kind of our configuration, a lot of our tabs and fields and layouts. You guys know once your implementation is, quote, done, this stuff continues, right? So you get done and then you figure out improvements, and Salesforce comes out with new functionality, and you're just always keeping up, always maintaining. Reports, constantly working on reports, but we started basically as soon as we had data in the system, and I have a feeling we'll never stop. And so then you'll see across the bottom a couple of the business processes we worked on. Again, that marketing approval process. A big one for us was contract approval, workflow approval. Probably more relevant to many of you guys is opportunity, workflow, and approval. Then in October of 2008, we started looking at customer support, and we did a customer support implementation in about 6 weeks, maybe 8 weeks. And rolled them all off of legacy systems into Salesforce, and that's been immensely, immensely helpful for us. Some of the future goals that I have going forward with Salesforce, we do a lot of events, a lot of face-to-face events, a lot of webinars, things like that, so I'm very excited about building out a really fully functioning event registration system around sites and to integrate that all back to our contacts and do some really good ROI reporting around it. We're starting to get excited about the new quotes functionality and, of course, the content. The content release that we all know about now is going to make my life really interesting in the beginning of next year. So some of the resources that we utilize, I just kind of for the record, small shop, like I said, 66 seats. Myself, I sent one person to administrator training, and I sent him to administrative training right before our contract started. I wish I had done it even sooner than that. So you're going to go to training. I highly recommend it. Get those people to training as soon as possible. But Jason and I have really done this all in-house. We have not engaged any consulting partners. We have leveraged the resources that Salesforce puts out there immensely. Our AE was a huge help. Our CSM was a huge help. If you don't know who your CSM is, everyone has a customer success manager. Go find that person and make use of them, because he's great at, even if he doesn't know the answer to something, he will get us in the right direction to find someone at Salesforce who can help us. But we're a great story of you can do it yourself. If you're starting and you've never written a line of code in your life and you want to learn how to write a trigger, there is everything out there at Salesforce.com that you need to teach yourself, to get educated, and to be successful. The documentation was great. If you're not technical and you never want to write a line of code, go look at the process diagrams and the process flows that they have for the various departments. They have fantastically done marketing materials that you can take to your senior executives and say, this is how it's all going to work. This is how it can integrate with our company. This is how maybe we diverge from the standard process, but it's a great starting point to build those conversations. The App Exchange, like I said, Allison said, tons and tons of App Exchange partners out there, and we have leveraged several. I'll give a quick shout out to Congamerge. I think they're great. Their technical support has been really great, and they've allowed us to do some fairly complex things, pulling data out of Salesforce into reports and then sending it to our customers and things like that. So that's been really great. One other tip, you can get as many developerforce.com accounts as you need. Get an account, and when you're interested in something from the App Exchange, download the app into a developer account. So you're not messing with your production org. In our case, we're a enterprise organization, so we only have one sandbox, and I like to keep that pretty clean. But if you download the app into a developer account, you can play with it, see what they did with their object model. Oftentimes, I will download one of the labs, the free apps, into a developer org, understand what they did, and just take the best stuff from it that I need. You don't necessarily have to keep the whole thing. You can just use it to get ideas of how you want to build your own custom app. The community is also fantastic. There are so many people, so many extraordinarily knowledgeable people out there who are willing to answer your question, who are willing to take the time to understand your problem and suggest solutions. And what you'll find is you spend some time on the community, you spend some time receiving help, and before you know it, you're out there helping other people, which is the whole beauty of Salesforce, right? One other thing, keep in mind, Salesforce is always adding new functionality, right? You guys have all seen this week, how many new things are coming out. It's hard, but it is absolutely worth the time and investment to stay up to date with the feature releases and what's going on. And every time they do release, they have webinars, they have all kind of outreach to try and educate you to the great new bells and whistles. And the more you can stay up to date with that, the more relevant and the more on the edge of solving every problem you can, you'll be. So the lessons learned, I think I've said it a lot, use the resources that Salesforce provides, right? Get out there, explore the community, explore their documentation, their help. The more time and energy you can put into thinking about the architecture, the data model, the process flow before you ever start configuring or implementing, the better off you'll be. Be prepared. It doesn't matter who you are going to make some mistakes, right? A couple of things that we hit that I wish we'd done a little differently. We originally pulled in like 180 fields on the contact record, and we just had field overload. And every field on its own seemed like a great addition to the record, right? But very quickly it became unmanageable and unusable, and especially when you were trying to build reports. So we had to kind of go and clean up and pull a lot of that data back. And some of that stuff is the horses out of the barn, and once the people see that it's in there, they're not going to let you take it away. So think about how much information you're sharing with your users, and leverage the things like record types and the report configuration so that you're not overwhelming them. Lastly, I started off saying this, document your goals. If you today write down what your goals are with Salesforce.com and then come back in 6 months, you will be shocked at how you can check those goals off and how you can document the return on investment for your organization. Thank you so very much, especially for coming out in the very last session. I appreciate you being here. I'm actually going to pass it off now to Sarah Williamson from Avaya. I'm a small implementation. She's a great example of a very, very large implementation. So thank you.
Hello, everybody. I'm going to start out by introducing Avaya. Some of you may not know who Avaya is. We're a global leader in the communications industry. We're in over 90 countries around the world. We've implemented Salesforce to over 3,300 internal users, over 3,500 partners, and we plan on expanding that very soon here. When we started this project, I'll give you a little history about Avaya for those that don't know the name. We come from AT&T, Lucent Technologies, We had come from being a publicly owned company. We were now private, wanting to change our sales models. So we got into a situation where we really needed to change what we were doing today. So these were our goals that we had set and put together when we started this project. And basically it was trying to become more nimble, quicker cycle times for our sales associates, improving our processes, etc. And of course, the last goal on the slide here is, of course, you've got to do this quickly, right? So our goal was to be able to implement this, get us off of our legacy CRM system and move into Salesforce within a 6-month period. So when we started this, we said, okay, if we've got a 6-month period, what is it that we can do, and where are we going to start? So as you can see, we started by defining first our scope and putting this through a 4-release strategy. We started, let's put the foundation in for our CRM and a little bit of the PRM functionality that we wanted to roll out. And then we started to build upon our foundation and build it out throughout the releases. So even though down below you'll see here that we've got it EMEA, CAL, North American, Asia Pacific, our regions, we did do a flash cut. So I'm going to take you into the project structure to how we ended out going and being able to implement something so large into so many users across the world. We had a pretty robust project team and project management structure. We also, our implementation partner was Accenture. We also pulled in the Salesforce Professional Services Group, who largely participated with our business teams, who defined the processes, and also on the configuration development side as well. So as you can see, of course, we've got over here the business teams. I was one of the leads for the CRM side, and then I had a counterpart also who was working and leading the PRM part. And then, of course, the application team, which is under our IT department in Avaya. And one of the big areas, of course, is this organization change management lead. So this is one of the key areas, of course, that you heard it from Allison and Emily, too, is that when you're working with so many people and implementing such a large change, you've got to have your change advocates out there. We called them our user champions, but call them power users, super users, whatever it is. So we had them also involved a little bit on the business side team so that they could understand a little bit about the process when it came time to roll this out and support the people in the field. This was our support model. So again, as I said before, we did a flash cut. And we had, we had a tier 3 support model. As I said before, we had our user champions out there in all of the different countries that we had, fielding our users' questions coming in first, and as they were able to close out the issues, then that was good. If not, they would escalate all the way up to the project teams, and then when we found that we actually did have an issue, then of course it would go through our change control process. So also you can see the different areas that we were pulling in different from different areas, right? We had our users coming in, giving us issues or questions. We also were taking information from the ideas. We're using the Salesforce cases as well, mainly for our partners when they log in through the portal, so they wouldn't have to call up or send an email. So several ways of coming in to solve or try to get one of their issues solved. I wanted to spend a little bit more time on the lessons learned, because with such a large implementation, we ran into this first area around the role hierarchy. Emily also suggested that, you know, when you're doing something like this in such a large scale, make sure that your business team, as well as your IT teams, are doing the administrative training. We ran into one of the biggest areas when we went live around the role hierarchy and the profile structures and territory manager and trying to understand how all of that fit. As you can imagine, in Avaya we have big organizations, several organizations wanting to have visibility to the funnel, overlay sales teams, and understanding who should be seeing what around the world, etc. So when we went live, we had big visibility issues. You know, they'd be calling up, I don't see my opportunity, or somebody in Asia Pacific would say, I'm seeing the ones in North America, etc. So it's very important that you understand from the beginning, and our mistake was that we left it to crunch time. So that was one of our lessons learned. Also, we've got several interfaces into our other systems in Avaya. So the mapping is critical as well to make sure that you're pulling in the relevant data. That needs to be done well up front as well. And the data cleansing. We thought we were doing well with sending out communications out to our Salesforce and saying, you know, clean up your opportunities because this is what's going to be the criteria to bring it back in. But we didn't focus on having them cleaning the accounts and contacts. So now we've got a lot of trash sitting in Salesforce that now we're going to have to figure out how to clean up. So that was another lesson learned that we should have done up front as well. The reports and dashboards. Typical within our organization, when we start one of these projects, we always left the reports and the dashboards for the very end. Should have been working on that up front. And of course that affects all of your data fields, what it is you're wanting to capture, etc. Right? So another lesson learned. And the program methodology, again, and there were some reasons why we did it this way, right? When you're working with several countries around the world with different languages, and everybody has their own opinion, and people in Europe do it one way, North America another way, Cala does it the other way, we ended up going with the standard waterfall approach and trying to document all of our requirements in once, hand it over to IT, they'd develop it, then they'd come back and show us what the product looked like, and we'd be going back and forth a lot. And I think that we made the mistake of doing it that way and not taking advantage of being able to configure on the fly. How do you like it? Don't make everything perfect. You know, do the 80-20 rule, and you'll get a lot out of just having your users use the system and make improvements that way. So, user acceptance testing, right? Again, here we're trying to please the world. We had too many people involved in our user acceptance testing. On the one hand, we're trying to make sure that everybody is involved, but on the other hand, it took us down a route where it was very difficult to coordinate this, having so many people and getting the user scripts out there, etc. So I would suggest that you pare that down to a more manageable group than what we did. Training, again, around the communications and getting your users trained. We did several different ways of training. We did live training. We did it in language. We had webinars. We had Uconnect where we taped them, all different kinds. We still did not get enough training out there in the field. And again, with the communications, our biggest and the best way for the communications to work is using our regional user champions. They're the best ways to get that communication out to the field. And of course, our post-go live support. That was critical as well to make sure that we were able to cover all of our users out there in the field. Okay, and just one more thing to recap our experience was that I would consider our implementation a pretty successful implementation, and a couple of reasons probably is mainly one is that we had very strong executive sponsorship throughout the whole project, and as Allison spoke at the very beginning, the top-down approach, that was critical, and of course everybody likes Salesforce compared to what we were using before, which I won't mention who it was, but people really, really like the tool. So, All right. Well, thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. So just to quickly recap, and then we'll do our drawing here and question and answer. So today we went through all the resources, implementation building blocks. All this stuff is available not only on the website, but we'll also have make sure that we get the information. This presentation will be available to you as well. And then next steps, obviously since you guys have taken all this time to go through this, that would be awesome. I know it's at the end of Dreamforce already, so when you get back, before or after Thanksgiving, exchange after all those business cards, follow up, talk about the other people's implementations, check out on the App Exchange, and try and download one into your sandbox and play around with it. Also, make sure to complete our online survey. We want to make sure to get feedback to see what you guys thought of this presentation here today, so we can improve it also for next year and make sure that we're offering you what's most helpful and relevant. So please fill out the survey, and they're giving an iPod Nano, which is always exciting. So before I jump into question and answer, let me go and I don't know if this is working. Oh, hello. I'm just going to do a quick drawing for our flip video. For everyone, you have to be here to win. Oh, we have a last minute. You have to be here in order to win the flip video. So anyone leaving, sorry guys. Okay. Great. Okay, so let me shake it up so that way folks who got here in the beginning. All right, and Ingmar Luth, business analyst from CPP. And this is in sponsorship from our internal Salesforce App Exchange has donated this. So thanks everyone for attending, but if you could stick around for any question and answer, and also with Emily and Sarah here as well. If you guys can use the microphones. Okay, great.
I'm implementing an 80-person nonprofit, and we're getting a lot of advice from consultants to use consultants at prices that are very high for us. And so I'm really I'm empowered by the fact that small organizations are doing it themselves. But one thing that we definitely get consistent advice about is like mapping our business processes into Salesforce. And I've never done that before, but it sounds kind of it doesn't sound like it's that complicated, but can you recommend something specific? Is there some specific tool? I'm looking for like a Word document or some website that can help me.
I'm going to give you a couple of recommendations. The first recommendation, I actually I've implemented 10 seats of Salesforce at my children's private school. So I've been in the nonprofit sector as well. The 111 model is great from the license donation standpoint. It's better from the time standpoint. I know that many people on the global consulting side donate their time and services to nonprofits. I have a good friend who's helping the Georgia Aquarium do an implementation right now completely for free, and he's a great consultant. So yes, I would recommend you get consultant services. No, I would not recommend you pay exorbitant amounts for them. So try and reach out and find someone willing to donate some time. As far as business process mapping, you can go from write it down on a piece of paper, figure out what you guys do, all the way to rational rows and like crazy complex tools. I would really recommend you start with both the implementation workbooks, and there are some great business process maps within Salesforce that kind of document the standard Salesforce business processes. And even if they're not totally relevant to your organization, they'll be clear to show you what kinds of things you need to be thinking about. And basically, you're talking about what do we do, what data do you need to move around, and who needs to touch what.
And that's on the community website of the implementation, how to get started in your different business process areas.
Great, thank you.
Oh, great. Yeah, you guys are all also have great stories as well, so.
Reuben Shelliff, Out of the Box Consulting. I put one of my action items before Dreamforce was to check the box that I am willing to help nonprofits.
Excellent.
And when I joined the whole, cloud, before we called it cloud, there wasn't a checkbox like that. There wasn't a partner portal. So actually excited to manifest that intention already. Question to, by the way, we assist Salesforce customers a few years usually after they implement to update it after the fact. It could be a successful initial implementation, but then business processes change, people change, and user adoption goes to, in high-tech, most of our clients are high-tech in this area, and then just the business moved. So we adapt and, again, go through the cycle of business processes. Thank you so much for emphasizing on that, key for any deployment or redeployment.
Yeah, it's always live and managing that release cycle.
Yeah, and it's amazing how much companies, time after time, even after investing a lot of money, time, and effort, fail to really give that enough attention. One of the reasons is the ease of use, ease of configuration. You can really be up and running within an hour.
Right.
So, we don't need all that cycle. We can move on. So,
and that's why with the agile approach, and I know internally at Salesforce, that's why we also do that as well, to your point, to make sure that it's an ever-changing, ever-growing, and also going back to what's in it for the end users. If they're not being listened to or they're not seeing the value, the adoption's going to drop. So constantly taking their feedback and having that, pushing out the value to them in a constant manner.
Absolutely.
And that can be a very different mindset. If your organization is used to making a large software purchase, installing that software purchase, and not changing much until the next major software purchase, this is a very different model to go to.
Mm-hmm. A specific question to... I forgot your name.
Sarah.
Let's see. Sarah.
Avaya.
Yeah, thank you. You mentioned that you used Accenture and also Salesforce Consulting Group. Can you talk a little bit more about that integration of using Salesforce? Who did what in that area? How did they work together?
Well, Accenture was the prime partner, and they did all of the project management and did the lead on the configuration. The Salesforce professional services were there when we were doing the business processes and trying to understand, well, can we do this in Salesforce? They were right there and being able to answer the questions live. And they also got involved a little bit with the configuration as well. So they were very actively working together.
Yeah, and with our
So it worked
professional
well.
services, we have a lot of offerings around expert services, more of what Sarah, since Avaya is such a large, with Accenture, a whole process redefining with Accenture. But then we also have, a lot of our professionals. I came from professional, did large implementations as well, where you do the whole entire requirements gathering to the deployment and training. So it's definitely, but we definitely work also with our large partners as well.
I have a question about the executive sponsorship. I feel like I kind of have to grow an executive sponsor. The logical person to do that, I think she might be able to understand the advantages, but she is pretty computer illiterate and embarrassed about it. And so I'm just wondering if you ran into that or have any tips for how to help someone like that really become a good executive sponsor.
And I don't think it has anything to do with understanding technology. It's really understanding your business. That executive sponsor knows your business and knows what the vision is for your business. And so from a business standpoint, how do you want to grow the business? Where do you want to see it taking? And then that's why you have your project team to really translate and how the technology can really help with the business. It's really starting with the business first, and then the technology then helps to back that up on what the solution is. But really having, what's the vision, what's the end goal. And also, a lot of our executive sponsors, we have VPs, we have CEOs, SVPs that are going out there and doing a trial of Salesforce and just playing around with it. They want to get their hands dirty because they just love the technology and love learning about it. But that's definitely not a hindrance because at the end of the day, it's what's the big picture, how are you working, and then you have your project team to help support what those goals are.
So an example that we've got in Avaya, for example, our vice president in one of our regions actively on a weekly basis goes in and manages the team and the funnel and the forecasting from the Salesforce screens. So when you know that your executive is looking at it and all of your stuff is rolling up and they're seeing it, then that really increases adoption.
But if that's something to just make the comfort level there, then getting your hands dirty and having your project team help build those dashboards, help build that for them, or having them sign up for a trial and really just start getting to know it. They don't have to know all the ins and outs.
Hi, we're about 2 months away, or about a month away, from rolling out Salesforce for case management within our call center for sort of service management. And we are facing a choice as to sort of when we roll out Salesforce. And it sounds like both of you are advocates of the sort of Scrum method, sort of roll it out incrementally. What I'm a little bit afraid of, we have the choice: we can go live with some static, out-of-date data about our customers, or we can wait to go live when we've integrated sort of a live updating mechanism. If you were faced with that choice, which would you pick? Especially with the fear that if customers...
How many seats are you talking about?
Probably 70.
And how, like 24/7 support? Or do you guys have downtime in your support hours?
We have downtime.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think Sarah and I would both say wait until you have the up-to-date data. It's a really hard thing to train your users on a system without the ability to be 100% confident that there's good data. So as soon as the questions start to arise of, oh, I got a customer call and this wasn't right, that is just like a slippery slope that you don't want to have to recover from.
Okay.
Data is always a bottleneck, and everyone always undermines how long it takes to clean up data, and then undermines the importance of cleaning up that data. So there's a lot of tools out there as well to help you clean it up. It's a lot easier to clean it up outside of Salesforce and then import the clean data to do the mapping, as Sarah mentioned and Emily, and make sure to have that clean data going in. Also, I've been a part of even large implementations where we've also put it on end users. Depending on your model, service and support might be a little bit more difficult, but if you can also, during training, if you're like almost there, having them clean it up as part of training, because again, getting your end users starting to get their hands dirty and into it, that's where the adoption increases. So if you can get them starting to clean up their own data in the training process, that helps as well. But really setting a timeline and using what tools are out there as well.
But definitely the better data, the live data that you've got. Actually, the only thing that I've had to do for work, real work, while I've been out here this week, is a field that our sales field is using that talks about how many customers in an account. Data was fine. There was a miscommunication about what that number was, and it caused a ton of hoopla and a ton of questions. And so you always want to be very clear about what the data is, where it's coming from, when is it updated. And the better quality data and the more timely the data, the better off you'll be.
And one more note on that is, what's the key data that they need on an everyday for go live? Initially, you might be archiving a lot of that data, or they don't need all that data cleaned up, like prioritize, so that way you can roll them out as soon as possible and not, I wouldn't wait until all your data is never going to always be clean, and that takes so long. So what do they have to have in order to do their day-to-day?
That's a good point. Thank you.
Any other questions? Feel free to come up also if you don't want to share your questions with everyone. Thank you again. I know it's Friday. I hope you guys had a great Dreamforce session. Thank you so much for coming, and we really appreciate your feedback as well. Thanks, guys.